So Brantley, how do you vibe code? What's your process?
I think there's a misconception with vibe coding. Like you jump into a builder platform like Replit or Lovable, and it's got this really pretty text box that says, "What do you want to build? The world is your canvas." And
Mhm.
we kind of think, okay, well, I need to immediately jump in and just start typing or transcribing and talking to it. And I think there's still a lot of the measure twice, cut once, um, where we need to kind of take a step back and say, okay, well, what do I want to build? What is the idea that I have? Um, as coding becomes a little bit cheaper, and I say that kind of like with an asterisk, like it's still it's still very, software engineers are very important, but coding is becoming a little bit easier. And so what I do is I have to start with the idea. And what is the idea? I go to my LLM of choice, or whoever's LLM of choice, large language model. It can be ChatGPT, it can be Grok, it can be Gemini. We have a plethora now of available agents, and you have to say, "Hey, I have an idea. Help me think through this idea and interview me." And I think one of the biggest things I learned from John Chaney is his interview me one question at a time prompt that he uses kind of religiously. And that's where I find where I can go to AI, I can have an idea and I can say, "Hey, this is what I'm trying to build, or this is what I want to work on. Interview me one question at a time to help me think about this idea and really kind of like put pen to paper and get it out of my head and have it explained." And the questions that AI comes back with are pretty surprising sometimes and very thought provoking. And
Like what, for example, might I ask you?
like it might come back and say, "Hey, like let's say I'm building like a client relationship management. Like I just
Mhm.
want to be able to track my clients. We did this for Gen AIPI, where we vibe coded our own CRM, and it's like, okay, I need to think through my CRM and what I do, and this is what I think I need. I need a way to track my clients. Who they are, what their needs are, the tasks involved, and then AI goes, well, what if do you want them to be able to see this? Do you want this to be client facing? Do you want it to be just internal? Do you want it?
Mhm.
It starts asking all these little questions that you just don't think about. You think you have them understood in your brain, but to get them on paper, it takes that next step to really think through each detail. And what if somebody were to log in? What permissions should they have? What roles should you have for this application? It all becomes very important. The details, the devil's in the details at that point, or
Mhm.
you need to really think through some of these things where it can't just be a. Um, one of the things is that John talks about a lot is when you go to AI and you say, "Hey, build me a weather app," or let's pretend you have an employee that's like a new employee and they're like a really good software developer, and you're like, "Hey, build me a weather app." And then they go, "Okay, technically they can do that for you, but what makes your weather app different from
Right.
Apple's weather app or any other weather app?" And that's where the details start coming in. Well, I want it to look like this and be this color and notify me when the weather's going to change and try to help me, all these different little things that become ideas from you is what differentiates you. So, anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, and the point for most of us of vibe coding is that we can make something very tailored to what we want. So if you just put in if you let ChatGPT or whatever make the decisions, or we use Lovable, then it'll give you something pretty bland, right?
Yep, pretty bland, cookie cutter, everything it's been trained on. And then you realize that your chat within the AI is like, "Yes, approved. Yeah, do that. Yes." And that's
Yeah.
not a conversation that you ever want to have in your history within the chat. You want it to be where you're in control and you're the one provoking or giving the AI the context that it needs to make this tailored to you and what you're trying to actually build. And we're the ones still in control. The AI is a super intelligent child. I think there's different
Mhm.
ways to kind of describe it, super intelligent child or whatever you want to say, where it's got all this information, but in order for it to be used in an appropriate way that's tailored and designed by you, you have to give input. And a lot of times we get bored. We get to where we're like, typing, and typing becomes so tedious. And so a lot of times I like to tell people to use that transcription tool, use that little microphone button that Chat GPT has or whatever, where you can just talk to it and just talk to it as if you were talking to another human. Yeah, this is what I want to build, and it can be really dirty and like with a lot of ums and let me think about that, and
Yeah.
then it makes it pretty and it puts it on paper pretty for you. So
Yeah, and so in your book, Conducting the Code, you talk through kind of the whole process. And so initially, you're trying to slow people down on the front end and say, no, 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 really flesh out the idea. How do you get to the point? When do you get to the point where you're like, okay, I've got the specs. Now I click go on Replit or whatever.
yeah, for me, it's what I like to call a build guide. And I kind of coined that myself over just years of vibe coding, where I've just like, or I guess maybe 2 years of vibe coding at this point, but where I started with engineering um, documents at first. Like software engineers use what's called a PRD, which stands for Product Requirements Document. There's also feature list is another document that software engineers like to get from the people that they're trying to build for. Get me a feature list, get me a product requirements document, give me these things that kind of tell us what we need to build. And that's what I start with, and that's what I actually follow with my book, because ultimately that still has a lot of value because those documents have a lot of value as far as like getting your ideas on paper and how you would actually build it with code. um, and then I take it a step further. Once I have like that PRD, I take it a step further and I have the AI basically create what I call the build guide, which is basically, hey, here's my product requirements document. Here's this whole conversation we had. I need you to put this into a builder's guide or a build guide for an LLM, for a builder AI agent like Replit or Lovable or whatever it is.
Mm,
And I need you to write it in a way that it would be able to take this and start building it. And it writes it out in a way that AI agents can ingest a lot easier.
mhm,
And I think it does it because a lot of times we're trying to conform AI to work like humans, whereas AI, I think, would be better done building it the way that it wants to build it, ultimately. And a prime example of this is like browser control. Like a lot of AI agents are able to control our browser now with screenshots and like finding the right coordinates and clicking on different things. And
mm,
it's super slow. It's like the slowest you would never if you've ever done it where you've had AI control your browser, it's just
yeah,
super tedious and slow. And the
mhm,
reason is because we're forcing AI to use a human tool to do what it needs to do. Whereas if you
mhm,
just gave it access to the API, it could probably do it in like 5 seconds.
yeah,
But we're forcing it to use the user interface, which makes it very slow. So
mm,
with that said, a product requirements document are for human software engineers to read and understand. But I have the AI take it a step further and build that into an AI build guide that is written specifically for an LLM to kind of follow through, and it does it in a certain way that LLMs kind of like to see their idea or whatever how they build, and that's where I then take it to the Replit or the Lovable or the Base 44.
mhm. Yeah, so lots more detail in the book, but key point to plan things out and have a fully baked plan before you proceed, right? Let's back up. You had told me that you were a tech nerd in high school. You built a computer back then, so you could probably code the traditional way. But how did you get into vibe coding?
Yeah, so I did code the traditional way. I think the first application I ever coded fully was like a Flappy Bird clone game, and I published
Mm,
it on the App Store. And so I learned Swift and how to kind of develop in the iOS world.
mhm,
Before and then I did a lot of game development, kind of like on my own hobby. Like I would use Unity as a
mhm,
pretty common game engine that's out there. A lot of people know about Unity and Unreal Engine. And then I got into the free Godot 4. I got into pretty heavily just because it's open source and I love open source stuff. They're super cool. Um, and so, yes, I could code the original way. I've done some pretty painstaking coding line by line in the past, and it's
mhm,
been really fun and engaging. Where I got into vibe coding was when kind of like the first Chat GPT came out, and I was building some projects on my own within like Visual Studio Code or whatever, coding platform, you want to do. And I was building some stuff and I was like, let me copy this into ChatGPT and see if it can fix it for me or make it better, this
yeah,
code block or whatever it is. And so it was super cumbersome, very hard. I was having to like copy paste so much things, and it was
mhm,
almost faster just to use the autocomplete within when
mhm,
software engineers are developing within an IDE, platform,
mhm,
they have like autocomplete where if they've used the line of code enough times, the
mhm,
system will kind of remember it and just paste it in there for them and do a
mhm,
lot of kind of autocomplete. And so that was when I first got started into vibe coding. It was a lot of copy pasting. Let me see what ChatGPT can do, and then I would tell it, "Hey, write me a complete script for controlling my character within the game," and it has to
Mhm,
be in for Godot. It's called GD script is the language that it uses,
mhm.
and it would do it, and then it would be wrong, and then I would have to tell it what was wrong and tell it the errors, and it would fix it, and then I would have to paste it back in, and so that's kind of where my first stab into vibe coding was. Super kind of really horrible actually, but
Oh,
really I saw the silver lining. I was like, this is going somewhere. It's going to be
right.
where it's going to help me do this way quicker and it's going to actually save me time, but right now I'm kind of just having to limp along, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's gotten so much better so fast. And at some point, John Chaney, just a year and a half ago, vibe coded GenAIpi.org, and we have a separate episode about that. But you're the chief AI officer there now. How did you get involved with them?
Yeah, so I followed John a few years ago when he was CEO of the company Okavu. They and they were getting into you know crypto, and kind of that world and ticketing specifically. But um, I I I was vibe coding and I was building businesses for myself, and I was never able to get them off the ground. I owned a photo booth business for a time, like where I bought some hardware and I was going to different events and I was doing photo booth and I was setting them up and helping them run it. And
Mhm,
and then COVID hit and kind of put me out of business because all my weddings got canceled. And then I went and built a company for selling e-commerce. I was selling on Amazon, and I had
mhm,
like a Shopify business, and nothing was ever getting to the point where I could quit my day job. And I was like, I'm missing something here. And I followed John, and I saw what he was doing, and he was offering his build a business in a weekend with AI course, which
mhm,
was kind of the flagship from GenAIpi.org.
mhm.
I was like, at the time he was charging $1,000, and I was like, man, I don't know if I could part with $1,000 right now. And I feel like I already know how to vibe code. I just don't know. But really, what the idea that I had was he could help me get it to the next level. Like maybe I could build a business and he could help me take it to the next step. And my wife was like, nope, you're gonna do it. I know, just spend $1,000. Go in, take his course. And I was
Mhm.
like, okay, as long as you're giving me permission, my wife,
Yeah. Yeah.
she's my cheerleader. And so I went, took his course, and immediately built a business, which was MVP launcher. During the course, I had it built and already done before the 2-day course was over, and I started advertising.
Mhm,
And it was John that kind of unlocked this like aha moment, like, hey, you need to be selling like immediately. You just need to learn how to sell,
yeah.
and you have something that people need. You need to be a better salesman. And he gave some tips and tricks in the course and how to do that with AI, how to use AI to kind of do that. And that's where I got involved with John. Is he kind of just saw me kind of take off pretty quickly with MVP launcher, and he kind of just kept tabs with me, and we kept texting back and forth, and I would ask him questions. And then it came to the point where he was like, hey, I'm getting a little bogged down. I'm doing about $1 million a year in ARR, annual recurring revenue.
And that's in the first year.
And
Yeah.
that was in the first year.
Yeah.
And he was like, I need some help, and I want to hire you to come be my first hire, essentially. And we talked about
Mm,
it for a little bit, and then he was like, yeah, come on over. That was in fall of last year. It might have been end of summer of last year.
mhm,
And then I just immediately was like, yep, let me just turn off what I'm doing and kind of just go put it over here where John was already having a lot of success, and I knew
mhm,
that I wanted to hitch my trailer to him, so to speak.
mhm. Well, and tell us a little more about MVP Launcher. What was the trajectory and what was it doing?
Yeah, the whole point behind it was I'm like, I can totally vibe code people's ideas for them and help them even, create their business plan and do it for a pretty cheap amount. What I thought was a cheap amount, was like $1,000. It was like $999.
Yeah.
You can come give me your idea and I'll vibe code your MVP within 3 days or so,
Mhm,
give or take. I think I said a week, but really I knew in my head that I could probably do it within a day or two,
yeah.
just to give me some leeway.
Well, and
And
a year ago, being able to get a software prototype for $1,000 sounded magical, like not really possible, but it was.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what I wanted. And actually I had a lot of people that didn't believe I could do it. It was
Mhm,
like it was almost kind of funny where I'd be selling it to people and they'd be like, "Yeah, it's got to be crappy, it's got to be not usable, it's got to be this or that." And I'm just like, "Let me it's like, no, it's like you can actually click the buttons, you can try it out, you can use it. Yes, it's going to break. Is it still an MVP? Yes, but is it useless? No. It's like it allows you to only spend $1,000 to test that idea instead of getting a software engineering company, or or a CTO or somebody to help you build it, and
Mhm.
you're thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars even into the hole before you can
Mhm.
even prove that your idea is viable or that people want to buy it. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And so did it grow? Did you market it and get sales, or how did it do?
Yep, I marketed it and had a sale within the first week. It was a guy that was out of Oregon that just saw me on LinkedIn, and he
Mhm.
wanted to build a prototype of this idea that he had, and
Mhm.
yeah, he paid the $1,000 and we got to work, and it actually turned into a little bit longer of a relationship. I meant to kind of just build the MVP and just kind of hand it off to people and say, here you go, now you can put it in front of your customers, have them give you feedback, and then it turned into, well, I don't really know how to apply the feedback,
Yeah.
and so it was like it turned into a little bit longer of an involvement where I would have them pay me monthly just to kind of be on a retainer to kind of help them kind of steer things and kind of make adjustments. But yeah.
Okay. That's cool. That's great. And so John was not technical at all. You had a technical background, but had just figured out vibe coding. So if someone's thinking about doing vibe coding for the first time with no experience, you talk in your book about the process, but what are some tips? What should they be thinking about?
Yeah, some tips are, I think curiosity is your biggest superpower. Eh, I can't really emphasize enough where it's people just get very in their own heads where they're like, I can't do something. I'm not capable. This is for smarter people. I'm not smart enough.
Hmm.
Um, and the reality is with AI now today, you have this like savant friend that never gets tired of your questions and won't call you an idiot. Actually, it's fairly hard to get AI to call you an idiot. It's actually where you want to kind of tell it, hey, be very frank with me about my idea. Don't just tell me that I'm the most intelligent person in the world, because I know that's not true. And help me kind of think through this. Um, but really being curious and just saying like, hey, can I do this? The answer is yes. With enough education, you can really do anything. And now
Hmm.
you have at your fingertips, you have a Chat GPT or a Claude or a Gemini that you can say, hey, how does this work in the real world? Would this be buildable? Is there any company doing this today? Is my idea viable? And it's like, maybe the answer is no. Maybe it's completely a no, and it's because of science that it's a no. Maybe it's a black and white, nope, that doesn't work. But usually the answer is, with enough education and movement and force coming from you as an individual with this idea, you can totally achieve it. And I think that's where vibe coding kind of will give you that spark that you might need, because you can kind of get to a solution and actually click and play through it pretty quickly. And I want to kind of caveat that with, maybe it's just the business that you want to start, but you need a website to be able to at least get your name out there, right? You need somewhere to people to go land, see what you're doing, and you can totally spin that up vibe coding very quickly now and have a very professionally looking, cool website that gives you that spark. Like, yes, I am able to sell this product. I am able, like, maybe you make shoes or you make cool shirts or whatever it is that you do, and you can have this cool website that gives you that spark to be like, yeah, this is my website, go check it out, this is what I sell, and it looks really cool and engaging, and you can kind of like have your customers have a really cool place to go, and it's like, yeah, I built that, I'm that person, and it helps you kind of get to that next step, is what I would kind of recommend. Don't sell yourself short, jump in, be curious, start building, and yes, you can. If you want to use my book, sure, for kind of like the process from start to finish, but ultimately you can go talk to ChatGPT and say, hey, I want to build this, let's interview me one question at a time and let's start building, and you can already be off to the races.
Yeah, and how should someone think about it? Like, say someone's running a business and they're like, look, we've never put together a website. I just want to create something, maybe collect some information from prospects. For something like that, how much are they going to pay on to use the platform, whether it's Replit or something else, ChatGPT subscription or tokens, and maybe API use? Like, what's actually the cost to do something like that?
Yeah. Let's see, if you're wanting to just build a website with maybe like a form just to collect some data, You're probably looking at $5 to $10 to get the website up and kind of running. At least the with you can supply it images, you can give it theme ideas. You can have it even look at other websites to kind of get ideas if you so wish. AI is fully capable of doing that. Any vibe coding platform. Also, obviously, I would have you start with ChatGPT or Gemini to kind of get your idea out and say, hey, what type of website do you want to build? What do you want it to look like? What do you want the user experience to be? All that stuff can be done beforehand to make it cheaper. Because that's where it gets expensive. If you just jump into Replit or Lovable or whatever and start vibe coding, but you don't really have a full thought out idea, that's where it's going to get more expensive because you're gonna go back and say, "Yep, I don't like that. Let's rebuild this," or "Let's do it this way or that way," and that's gonna rack up the tokens really quick. So you're gonna want to kind of go to an LLM of choice, get your idea out, your website kind of design, and then you go drop it into Replit or Lovable, and then have it start building there. And that's going to save you time, money, because ChatGPT, you pay $20 a month for a pro account, and you can chat with it all day, and it's not going to increase your price. Whereas Replit or Lovable, the every change you make is going to cost tokens and cost pennies or dollars. Um, and so I think you're looking at probably tops, $100 if you're going to really go in and build a website that kind of gets a little bit more. If you're just going to have it be a website with a form, $20 or less, easy. You could have
Yeah.
that built and kind of out there in the world for people to start, working with you and kind of, expressing their interest. I built the conducting the code landing page for my book for $15, I think, if I remember correctly. Um, and that's all it is a form and a website.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And again, just the scale, the drop in price is going to be amazing to people who haven't been following what's going on. So on the simple end, for $20, you can probably have a pretty great website. What's the most complex thing you've seen someone successfully vibe code?
The most complex thing that I've seen, there, and this might get a little technical, but it is the most complex thing I've seen is I built an application that was basically spinning up Amazon virtual machines, and it had complete access to the Amazon platform, through API. And it could actually spin up a virtual machine, and then it could get into the virtual machine's terminal, the black box with all the coding, and it can do and install things within there and kind of spin up a whole virtual machine ecosystem all on its own, with me just giving it a prompt. That was probably, I would say that's the most complex just because it's doing so many different things, like building a, it's having to spin up the right virtual machine with the right capabilities, the right specs, and then it's having to go in and then start doing stuff on that virtual machine. So it's almost like it's a computer AI agent that's spinning up another computer that's then installing things onto that virtual computer that will then end up being because then I had it installing OpenClaw onto that virtual machine. So then it's installing another computer AI agent. So it's almost like a nesting doll, Russian nesting doll of like computers within computers doing things within computers. And so that's why I feel like it's complex.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably what my answer would be that. So
Okay, and if people are wondering why it's Amazon, it's AWS, right?
AWS, correct?
Yeah. So, well, that's great. So I just want to make the point, you can actually do really complex things. That's not what most people need to do, but you can. When people are skeptical about the abilities of vibe coding, what do you tell them?
Yeah, when they're skeptical, I say, look, the reality is the AI is as um if today was kind of like a blank slate, AI is doing some amazing things right now. Just a year ago, we saw it where it was super kind of like very insecure. Everybody was kind of the ones that like to poke holes in AI are always about security. And what does that mean? Well, it means that my point would be if you can learn and know how to prompt and ask the right questions, you can harden and build and make secure your application. So vibe coding isn't just AI slop as people call it.
Right.
It really comes down to what are you measuring twice, cutting once? Are you planning beforehand? Are you asking the right questions? Are you asking AI, hey, is this a secure platform. I'm about to publish this to the public internet. Is anybody going to be able to get in and steal my data? Do I have API keys that are laying around in places that can be easily accessible to the outside public? Um, and obviously the vibe coding platforms are taking care of a lot of this for us. Replit has a security scanner that it runs before you publish anything. It just automatically runs it and it looks for things like that, like the low hanging fruit. But ultimately, people that are really skeptical, I kind of just think that they haven't played with it yet. They haven't even tried it. They're just kind of like, nah, I don't like that. I like to do it my way here, and I'm comfortable in my space, which is very, a human thing to do. I'm very comfortable in my house. I don't want to go live in an Airbnb or a hotel. I'm comfortable in my home. But if you're not curious and playing with it, I think you're going to lose out on a bunch of opportunity, because right now is the opportunity that it's creating a lot of movement in the world right now. AI is kind of really just the other day the government shut down, or told Anthropic they needed to shut down Fable 5, their latest model. This is creating so much tumultuous movement in the world that you got to be ready to take advantage of this, and kind of be a part of it. And the best way to do that is to be curious, get in, learn, use it, and then see for yourself. I mean, I can tell you till I'm blue in the face that it's a secure thing and that I can make a secure app, but until you do it specifically, you probably won't believe me, I guess. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of what I would say to them.
Yeah. And in your book, near the end, you also talk about some things you can do to make sure something's as secure as it can be. And then I guess one takeaway for people is if you're worried about security, I guess don't create an app for medical records. Like focus on some area that's a little less sensitive, right? So
Yeah, start small. Start that's every what's the saying? I know there's some smart person out there that said it. Every complex system started from a simple system that was then built upon. And I think that's the same thing with coding and software, is like you got to start simple with a minimal viable product, and then you add features as people tell you what the features are. You don't want to build a rocket ship and then have it blow up when it tries to take off. You want to start small with a tiny little bottle rocket, maybe make sure that works, and then work your way up.
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, and for us, the ability here to prototype professors' ideas, like to create a working prototype of a software concept, has just been a game changer. So, last question. I know we're about out of time, but so the book is conducting the code. What for people who read it? What would you want them to take away?
For people that read it, I just want them to kind of put yourself in the shoes of your childhood person, and look and really feel empowered to go achieve what you think is unachievable. And I know that's said a lot by a lot of people, and people are just like, yeah, okay, it's easier said than done. Yes, that is
Hmm.
completely true. But you have so many resources now. Just 20 years ago or 30 years ago, people were still going to the library and checking out books to then get information. And now we have Google and all the web to find information. Nobody has to go to a library really anymore. And now it's even a step further now, where the resources are so abundant for you to be able to go and achieve a goal that you have. You just have to reach out and use them. And my book is kind of like trying to get you to kind of take that next step, because I made it purposefully. I made it tool agnostic because I know that tools are going to change today to tomorrow. There's going to be the new Replit in a month, and all of a sudden Replit's going to be outdated. Whatever it is, the tools are going to change, but the ideas within it of how you can actually take an idea, get it on paper, poke holes in it, get it to the point where you can build it and get a build guide, and then actually have it built and using it within a week, or even within a couple days, or maybe even a couple hours. That capability is now, and you can do it now. And you can actually go to somebody and say, hey, look at this idea I'm building. Do you want to invest money in it? And it can be to that point where the person might play with it and say, yeah, I'll totally invest money into this. And it can be that prototype uh pretty quickly, and pretty, inspiring. So I just want to inspire people to go build, be curious, find your north star, and go build your tools and build your product. So
Okay, awesome. And I know people can find you at genaipi.org or on LinkedIn. Any place else they should look?
um those are the two best ways to find me. And you can go, I think it's, well, conductingthecode.com is the landing page for the book if you wanted to sign up. I eventually plan to kind of have maybe some events or
Mhm,
book signings or whatever, so
mhm.
basically exploring that space. I've never really done any of that stuff, but I want to kind of interact with people and really see if, the value people are getting from it, if any. Maybe it's a dud, nobody gets value from it. That's
Uh,
okay too. But I would love to kind of interact with people and just talk to them and just get ideas and
okay. Well,
collaborate.
Thanks for sharing your insights. It's cutting edge and really helpful for anyone who's trying to learn this. So appreciate you taking the time, Brantley.
Yeah, thanks.